process.
Yeah. Let me just have seen, and it's the third recommendation in that report. It says develop a community consultation plan to ensure adequate engagement with the community before, during and after the trial. What has been done in that respect today?
So through the chair, we did develop some processes. We didn't develop a formal community consultation strategy and plan, but we obviously had been advising residents and the like as part of that process leading up to the trial, and obviously during the trial, and then post. We haven't done a lot on that, but we obviously have taken some notes in that with any complaints or anything that happened during that process.
So basically, there's been an informal process. I know that this same topic comes back. Are there now plans to set up a formal consultation plan?
Look, Dr. Newkirk, we have not. We're making decisions tonight in regards to the process. But to say, have we set up another consultation plan? I'd have to say no at this point in time. We may make that in a further decision-making process later this evening.
No, thank you. No, I realise, this is the kind of problem that we have, that I have to ask questions before your deliberation. Okay. In June this year, Council I note in there, and that's item 2C that was added, that there was a request for a revised capital and operating financial estimate for the installation of permanent backpassing infrastructure. And I understand that this meeting is actually going to answer that request from Council. Sorry, I have to find the right pieces of paper here. I note on the in the BMT technical note that we've been given with the briefing notes here, a quote, and I want to quote from what they tell us on page 69. I think this is rather important. It says here, BMT has not undertaken a detailed review of this cost for this briefing, nor the quote for materials supplied provided by the Shire of Esperance. However, the concept pipeline route proposed by the Shire of Esperance does not indicate any significant deviation undertaken to confirm budget for design, tendering, construction and testing. Further, consultancy costs may be required for environmental and heritage approval. I also note the comment on page 12 of the officer's comment for this meeting today. The Department of Transport has assessed the project proposal and recommended it be approved for funding. This has been endorsed by the Minister. If the project didn't stack up, it is very unlikely the state would have not, I presume, invested financially into the project. My question really is, can Council now confirm that the revised capital and operating financial estimates are those contained in...
Thank you for that question, Dr. Newkirk. I think that it would be wise if you listen to the debate that takes place in due course. This is certainly is this item, so I think that you'll pick up the information and the assurances that we might seek out during the course of this debate. Thank you.
Well, it's still, I think it's still quite pertinent. BMT note says they haven't done anything further. The only additional information that has been provided is what is on page 13 of the notes. And I just wanted to know, is that all that has changed?
I would, before we make a decision. Thank you, Mr Walker.
So through the chair, the Shire has developed a budget for this project. Our budget for the project is $1.45 million, which is what we've applied for the grant funding for. We gave that information to BMT, and we also gave obviously the quote for the materials to BMT as well, and their assumptions and the like. Obviously, they've qualified their report in saying that, and they said, obviously, we've provided this from the Shire. We've quickly looked at the materials quote and gone escalated and the like, but the Shire is, well, as we've developed this.
I have an issue with that, and I would like to see further clarification on that. This budget talks about 1.45 million, and I understand from the meeting that we had in June, or cost of 1.3 million for pumping. So I just want to understand, is this now the full cost, or do we now also talk about pumps that need to be included in the project?
Mr Walker?
So through the grant, it's purely for the piping infrastructure to hook up diesel booster pumps to process. So this cost to put a pipeline buried in along the pathway in the road reserve there, and hook into three diesel booster pumps. Ultimately, electric booster pumps have got some advantages, particularly with noise and, I guess, long-term costs. So as part of that, and being optimistic, we've put in for a grant for that. I don't know if it'll be successful or not. We'd have to wait for the federal grant. But then, if we do go down that path, it will be funded.
The pumps that it currently rents?
The Shire doesn't rent the pumps, so the pumps are part of the contract that the Department of Transport have with their dredging contractor, and their dredging contractor bring in the booster pumps, so they're all coordinated.
Okay, thank you. On page 12 of the officer's comments, in item 4, it says here, there would be nothing stopping Shire in the future value adding to this solution, i.e. adding you can reduce or you can simplify the solution and hence reduce the need for the sand, etc. Aren't we then looking right now at over-capitalising the project?
Mr Walker?
In my professional opinion, no, we're not over-capitalising. There's always going to be need for bringing sand in and replacing the sand that's lost from the port breakwater. So there's a net deficient in the bay of around 20 to 25,000 cubic metres of sand. Putting in the sand getting lost during those storm events. So potentially we can value add, reduce the amount of sand we're going to need pumping, but we're always going to need pumping. Otherwise we'll be resorting back to bringing in sand with trucks.
Okay, thank you. It was scheduled to start next year, and the comment was that it was expected to start in May 2023. On page 68 of the BMT note, it says there, it says there, near the bottom of the page, completion of the above design development, engagement with regulators and stakeholders, and pipeline construction appears unlikely for the next maintenance dredging planned for April 2023. Here, April to July minimises weather downtime with flexibility, approvals of dredge, backpass on weekends, and with dredging downtime and roster days off. will Shire be ready to start this project in May 2023 or April 2023 as suggested by BMT?
July, August at the latest. Obviously, it's not ideal we're starting so late, and BMT have done this technical note in the past 2 weeks. So realistically, like we probably will struggle to meet that deadline. I think we still should be optimistic and try to meet it. Otherwise, my option is I'm going to have to truck some more sand into that area, and I guess that's what I do want to avoid. But that is the worst. If council decide to go ahead with this project, then we'll be having some serious conversations with Department of Transport how we can work together in getting this project and getting the benefits of it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr Walker. So thank you for your questions, Dr Newkirk. You're looking for another one there.
I believe that if Shire is prepared to truck sand, I mean, there's comments in the report saying that there's a lot of work to be done before the project can start, and I just wanted to have assurance that there is a contingency plan in case the
thank you for your interest in this subject, and we'll continue on with our meeting, which you're invited to stay and listen to. So, councillors, that completes public question time. And so we go into item 6.1, which is the key subject for this meeting tonight, and the Esperance Bay sand backpassing infrastructure. And so, are there any questions you'd like to put to Mr Walker? No, first up, I'll ask Mr Walker to, if he's got anything that he wishes to say about the report now.
I get to make a final investment decision, so hopefully there is enough information here so you can make that decision. As part of that, obviously, since the last time, we have received an offer of $750,000 to get a rigorous budget estimate and proposal to come up with that figure. By us doing it in-house, we'll actually save quite a bit of money, so that's the plan, to do it with our town maintenance crew. If we're going to contract this out, yes, I think it probably would be higher, and I understand where BMT came to with their assessments based on the material costs going up, and material costs have gone up significantly, particularly around the HDPE. But we believe we can contain it within those costs, and we do have contingencies built into that. We have also engaged BMT to do the technical note, as per council's request, to look at the trial and look at the operation. The technical note is a little bit scrambled. I do apologise for that. It's a bit over the place. But yeah, so from the trial point of view, they pumped 41,000 cubic metres. They did have some difficulties retaining sand and in getting that booster, or the first booster pump hooked up, which caused some difficulties. And there's a lot of lessons and a lot of stuff that you can learn from the trial, which they've outlined in their report there in retaining that. We have lost 10,000 cubic metres of sand over that 5 months, which is probably kind of on track to be expected. We're obviously expecting net sand regression. Obviously, with only 18,000 cubic metres there at the pumped after the trial, we can't afford to lose the infrastructure. From an operating cost point of view, so the trial obviously was expensive. I'm not recommending we put in temporary pipes every time we look to do this project at $20 a cubic metre. To actually realise the cost benefits, we need to put permanent infrastructure in, and we estimate that that'll bring it back to the $10.13 a cubic metre. We have estimated it to truck sand in, and this is using Wiley Bay, which is a finite resource. I'm not sure where we look to go after. We mystic really, like that is making sure everything goes to plan. That doesn't really allow for downtime and the like if we do have issues. The Department of Transport are awarding a new dredging contract most likely to a new contractor that hopefully will get announced soon, and then we'll need to work with that new contractor to make sure that the infrastructure we're putting in will meet their hundreds of thousands of cubic metres from their port each year. So it will be a similar size, but we'll look to work in with them as a key stakeholder. And I guess the conclusion from the report is that the assumptions and recommendations still remain valid, subject to some advice, working with the beach profiling, making sure the pipe's located in the right position, and I guess the key considerations there is obviously the technical notes says the previous reports are still valid. The Department of Transport have assessed the project and think it's worthy of investing funding into. If it wasn't viable or they didn't think it'd stack up, they wouldn't put money on the table. My professional opinion is by doing sand renourishment in the most sustainable way possible, we're doing the lowest risk option. If we put hard infrastructure in there, then we're going to produce outside risk. If we do a groin, is it in the right location? And we still don't deal with the net loss of sand in the bay. I think the ultimate solution is the port actually do the proper breakwater and protect the whole bay, and then we'd be happy, but that's a lot of money. There's nothing stopping us by putting some artificial reefs or the like in to stop the wave energy to, I guess, taking the sand away during those storm events. Yet we're still going to have that net sand loss because of the sand movement as part of the normal coastal erosion. I guess just some other quick points. The costs that we've done there are just the total costs. Obviously we do receive grant funding to help us with this program, because it's not all the Shire is making, and the state has supported us since the port went in. So we do get cap grants each year. We can get 50%, or we will get that funding each year, and then the Shire might be left exposed. I guess with the last paragraph from officer's comment, which is one of the things as part of the funding agreement, that we'll have to enter into an operational framework with Department of Transport on cost sharing and how it's operated. I think this is a great security for the Shire. If we can get into a long-term cost sharing arrangement and how that will work each year, it will support, I guess, that long term going. We know with some certainty what we're going to get and what we're going to get supported with in doing this program. So they're probably my key points. I'm happy to take questions if there's any questions around the table.
Thank you. Councillors, my recommendation to you is that we suspend standing orders now so we can have a good discussion over this subject and not be restricted by the normal format of a structured meeting. So is there anyone prepared to move? Moved by Councillor Oborne, seconded Councillor De Haas. Against, that is carried 9 votes to 0. Thank you. That allows us now. No. We're just suspending the standing orders, which means that we can speak multiple times on the subject of where we want to go, ask multiple questions. So first up, Mr Walker said that he's happy to answer questions. Are there any questions to him at this stage or comments? Councillor Oram.
Yeah, through the chair. Mr Walker, if we don't make this by the time they start dredging, are we in danger of losing that funding we've currently applied for?
The funding's not contingent on making a dredging deadline. We do have a date that we're meant to have the funding acquitted by the 1st of June 2023, so it's a pretty tight time frame, but there's potential for extensions if we can show valid reasons. So yeah, there's not contingent.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr President. I've got a bunch of questions.
Yeah, go for it.
As you'd expect. It refers on page 67 to the use of an amphibious long reach excavator because of the issues around placement of sand and retention and having to extend a sand bun parallel to the water line and then blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. Sorry, I'm going to be articulate. Is the use of a long reach excavator going to be required going forward? If not, why not? And if yes, has that been included in the calculation?
Excavator was overkill in the sense that it sat there and played and didn't do a lot of work. I have issues with the previous dredging contractor. Hopefully we'll find out soon who the new dredging contractor is, and they'll be better operating. My view is, yes, you'll need a long reach excavator to help move the pipelines around, but I think the amphibious excavator is not required. You need an amphibious excavator in soft material. That's what they're designed for. And obviously we do have a long reach excavator in a proportion of that.
Yes, yeah, keep going.
So, so based on that, what you're saying is that the use of a long reach excavator is actually included in the $10.13 per square metre. I'm
Yep.
sorry, metre cube.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Got another one, Councillor Flanagan? Yeah, go for it.
The capex. Just in terms of the methodology that was used to calculate the capex, can you just explain that, please?
So this is the Shire's capex estimate of the 1.45.
1.45.
Yeah, no drama. So we've allowed, but we need a professional company to tell us, make sure we've got the pipe sizing right, the locations of the booster pumps right, and give us that professional opinion, which is going to be required as part of the grant funding. Anyway, then we got material quotes. So you've seen that referenced in the BMT technical note there for HDPE pipe. We've sized the pipe on probably on the largest size that we're expecting, and at a fairly high pressure rating of 16 PN16. So there, we've been conservative in that methodology, and we've used those costings to develop our material cost. And then we've costed out, as the next stage, our guys installing the pipe. We've based that on being able to install 50 metres a day of pipe. That should be very achievable given that we're in sand dunes for a lot of it. We've got a coastal path we're going to be putting through at the same time, so we will do the sealing of the path after we do the pipeline in there, so we can make some savings. And then we've allowed some money for reinstatement of the existing footpath, particularly along Castletown Quays, to make sure if we do damage any of that, we've got some funding to reinstate that. And then we've allowed a 10% contingency on top of all those figures that have some contingency already built into them.
No, that's
I'm
fine.
just worried that some others might
No,
have
no,
questions to
well,
ask.
when I think you've asked too many questions, I'll tell you.
Thanks, Mr. President. Okay, so and you did actually cover this, I think, earlier, where we're comparing, just to be sure that we're comparing apples with apples. So that is actually exclusive of any sort of subsidy arrangements or funding provided by the state government?
Yeah, it does exclude the dredging costs. So obviously Department of Transport will be doing their dredging program regardless. So it's purely the cost to backpass it from their dredger back.
And just in relation to the costings on page 13, you've got depreciation, ongoing cost, $29,000 allocated over 50 years. So can I ask why 50 years was chosen in terms of actually the calculation for depreciation?
Obviously we've got to assign a life to the pipeline. It's a little hard to rate for the slurry that's going to lead away the pipe. So I've erred on the side of a bit of caution there and just brought it back. Normally you'd hope to get 80 plus years out of HDPE pipe. So I've brought that back just to go, if it is not, if it's not as going to live as long, that we're being a bit conservative in that figure there. Noting that we're only going to be pumping 40,000 cubic metres a year. So I have to do the maths, but it's not massive volumes to put through it.
Okay, you got another one?
So, and I think this has already been covered, but I might just cover that again. So in terms of the OPEX, that's inclusive of the operations of the diesel pumping stations provided by the dredging company.
Yeah. So that's, yeah, all inclusive of the cost to get sand from the end of the dredging line where it's currently output to the erosion hotspot.
And can I just ask, or two?
The electric boost
Yeah.
are two.
Yep. What's the implications in relation to the OPEX?
I haven't done detailed calculations, but the OPEX would be reduced over time. Just because we're not paying for diesel, you've got a lot more certainty about the power usage. Obviously, there's quite a bit of upfront costs, and there's less maintenance to maintain an electric booster pump versus a diesel booster pump.
Yep.
And then they can live there permanently or semi-permanently.
Okay, next please, questions. Councillor Chambers.
Do you know if that is similar to other coastal areas of WA this year, or whether it just happens to be unique here for the weather and the tides that we've had?
I can't say with certainty. I haven't really looked at the other areas. I guess it goes back to us pumping or having only retained 18,000 cubic metres on site. So 18,000 metres or cubic metres should last a year. In essence, that's the theory. Yes, we'll need to bring some more sand in this year to make sure we don't lose the infrastructure. But we'll obviously be looking to retain a lot more sand, and obviously the BMT report highlights some great things when it.
Learning from the past.
Yes.
In regards to sand, you said that you'd be, if we have to truck sand, we would be doing it from Wally Bay, and you said that that's a finite sand. Do you have any idea where the next lot of sand would be and how much that would add to the cost?
So for the next round, I've still got a little bit left on Ocean Street, so I'll be looking to use Ocean Street as the closest source, and obviously serving a dual purpose in removing the sand from out the subdivision or old subdivision there. Wily Bay, yes, we've got issues around where we've taken it. Obviously, we need quite a bit of sand there to cap the landfill, so we can't eat into those reserves. So even if there's a little bit of sand left over, we still need enough to put, I think it's 1.2 metres of sand on top of the existing landfill to seal that up. I don't have options that I've really investigated heavily around where we'd get that from. Obviously, the closer the better, but I can't. There's none in town that I can picture, and the likes would be my expectation.
Mr. Walker, I'll just ask you a couple of questions while we're talking about the sand. Where we're trucking in sand, it's dry sand, and is it right for me and fair for me to say that the dry sand seems to disappear quicker in the early stages of dumping compared to the pump wet sand?
I think the main issue with losing sand is I don't think it's hard to compare the pumping the slurry of the sand and trucking it in, because when the sand was pumped in the slurry, it created quite a bit of a slope down, and you lifted that up. Where when we truck sand in previously, you create a face, and then it just keeps eating away at the face. Yet it's not really a true reflection of how much sand is put there through that process versus pumping the sand through the slurry, because you've got all this sand that's lifted up that slope. which is one of the advice notes from the tech that they need to rework that process and make sure that it's reflective of what's happening. So at a way, it erodes quite fast until it builds up that slip, and then you kind of retain more.
Okay, well, you probably said yes to my question, I think, by the question I asked and your answer, but thank you for it. My second one in regards to sand is foreign matters running onto our beaches. Did we have problems like that with the pumped sand from the dredging process out of the Boat Harbour?
None that I've been reported to. I haven't seen any when I've been and visually inspected it. Pretty dodgy material. And then we've been picking up stuff from that ever since.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Oborn.
Just wondering what the implications are of the Department of Transport awarding a new dredging contract to a new dredging contractor in terms of our working relationship with them. We have confidence that they've brought this to the attention of the person who's put their hand up, that you will need to work with the Shire of Esperance because there's already money on the table. And
So our relationship will be with the Department of Transport. Department of Transport engaged the contractor to do the works. They're obviously, I haven't seen their tender, I haven't seen the stuff they've put out, but I assume they're aware of it. But I guess there's already similar processes that are happening in the States, so they operate a similar process in Port Geograph, in Busso, and also in Mandurah, bypassing the estuary there, and have arrangements in place. So it's not a unusual process to be pumping sand and doing like a fair run of sand versus dumping it out the backside
Yep.
of a harbour. So
that's good, that was my wondering.
Councillor Flanagan.
Oh, just on the back of that. So that's where I was actually going to ask a similar sort of question, given our reliance on the contractor to provide the pumps. So whether, our level of confidence that the Department of Transport are actually going to include that in any sort of procurement or tender or contractual documentation they have with the dredger. So, because that has very big implications for the project. So you would assume that you would have locked that in, but
I haven't seen the tender documents. I haven't seen that stuff. Obviously, the state government procurement process is pretty set. But DOT are very aware of this project. Are very aware that we've.
Councillor Oborn again.
Last question, thank you.
That's okay.
So we've applied already for a grant for 2 electric pumps, booster pumps?
Yes.
Yes, so I note in the report on page 12 of the officer's comment that 3 booster pumps, the event that we get the grant and we get 2, how do we procure the 3rd one without affecting this budget?
So obviously that's a completely separate proposal. We've called it stage 2 of this project. You can only, it's the 3rd booster pump, or the first one in the run, will be in the Flinders area that's uncleared. So their normal process, they've got to do 1 booster pump for their normal dredging. If they put the sand out to the east of Bandy Creek, that's what they do. Sorry, does that answer your question, or is that?
Then we end up with 3.
Yes.
where are we, 67 of the technical report, it makes reference to during the 2021 backpassing campaign, there was no stockpiling of excess sand. This of actually stockpiling excess sand in the event of, say, major storm events or whatever it might be.
Yes, I think that's a very sensible move that we store some excess sand there instead of having to find another sand source, particularly when we're not pumping sand and can't replenish that sand source. So yes, I've thought about it. So there needs some rework in that, and I agree that stockpiling should be part of that process.
Okay. Is there any further questions? Councillor Oram?
Yeah, through the chair. When I was watching that pump working last year, I also noticed that trucks were there for a while supplementing it as well. Does that come into your figures? Is that taken into account? And how much did you do?
Into the compartment two, if you work your way along from the jetty headland. But it was just about to eat away at some of the infrastructure there, and it was hard for them to move, obviously, their infrastructure and pumping to get into that compartment one, so they put some sand there. It wasn't a lot of sand. Make sure we protected that area just in that short term, just because we were eating away into that laydown yard, which we wanted to save.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Any questions to Mr. Burge? Or one of the other directors?
I feel like I'm like the Senate estimates grilling.
Okay. So, councillors, I mean, if there's no further questions, we can come out from yours. Moved by Councillor Chambers, seconded by Councillor Oborne. Do you wish to debate it? Okay, councillors, we have a recommendation to consider. You've asked significant questions over it, and we can now take up and deal with the recommendation, which is on page 14 of your agenda. And we'll see where we take it from there. So, is there any questions about this recommendation to the or to Mr. Walker or to the no movers? So it's moved by Councillor Horan. Is it seconded? Would you read the recommendation, please, Councillor Horan, then I'll
Yes.
seek a seconder.
The officer's recommendation is that Council 1 enter into hotspot coastal adaptation and protection major project fund to negotiate a collaborative operational framework for the future operations of the sand backpassing infrastructure with Department of Transport.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Horan, seconded by Councillor Flanagan. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Horan?
I think we've pretty well discussed it, covered just about all the major questions we had. I think it's a good option rather than trucking it and tidier. That means we can also carry on with the foreshore, that bring that along a bit further and make that look much nicer instead of these trucks going over it all the time. So yeah, I think it's a good plan. Let's go ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? No speakers against. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Flanagan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Okie dokie, where do I start? Sorry. The sermon according to Shane Flanagan, or Councillor Flanagan. My intention was to vote against this motion today because I had significant concerns in terms of the integrity of the process and the issues around the compression of the timelines and the fact that we didn't proceed to a second trial. However, I firmly believe that backpassing as a solution is the answer. The questions that, that is the reason why I thought it was important to support the motion.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Is there a speaker in favour of the motion? Councillor Chambers?
If I may, through the chair, we've seen trucks roll in and out of that beach for many years now, dumping sand in there, and I think that this next step, logically, to replace the sand through a backpassing trial is certainly the way to replenish the sand program going forward.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? Councillors, I'll exercise my right to speak now in favour of the motion. Councillors, this isn't a perfect solution. We know it's not a perfect solution, but nobody knows the perfect solution of littoral drift in the south coast of Western Australia, and I think many other places of Australia at the current time. But I believe this is a good process on the facts that We have been able to maintain reasonably well the amount of sand. We know we'll have to truck some sand in. We understand the facts of that clearly. We've, it's been in Creek Boat Harbour, but it's picked up. We've been told that if we pick it up in the more closer to the opening of the Bandy Creek Boat Harbour, it's probably going to be better sand that will last longer, so it's an opportunity to improve the efficiency of the whole thing. I've had the privilege of going for a trip around a number of places in Australia to look at. I've heard a lot about that, but certainly in Portland, in Victoria, in South Australia, where the sand runs up and down the beaches from Brighton Beach to the Glenelg Beach, and it gets taken back down and they just keep on recycling it. That's done with this type of system now. It used to be done by trucks. And I think that it's probably the modern and best way of doing it to avoid all of the other complications we've had by carting in huge volumes of sand. We all know there are people in Esperance who tell us it's all wrong, there's better solutions than that, but nobody's proven any one of those systems to stand up as far as I'm concerned. They have given opinion what they would do. We can't allow it to eat into the roads like it might have in 1956. We can't allow it to take out infrastructure along our all the way along the Garsettown beach. We've got to be able to manage it now. This is the best option we have. I just recommend to you that you vote in favour of this motion for the maintaining what we are doing now in the best possible way. Is there a speaker against?
But everyone said, normally when we make big decisions like this, we think about the triple bottom line, financial, social, environment, and financially we've got an opportunity to collaborate with another government department, which is special and good for the taxpayer, you know, at a local government level and a state taxes level, you know, they're getting bang for their buck. Socially, we all know that no one likes when we dump money into the ocean. But environmentally, I feel like this is more sustainable, because if we just build more expensive permanent infrastructure.
Speaker in favour? Is there an amendment? There's no amendment, no one speaking against. I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried by 9 votes to 0. So that concludes the business for which we've gathered this evening. Thank you for the questions to members of the public, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.